This is the Crush Crowdfunding Podcast, the #1 place for people who want to launch on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. My name is Nalin, and I invite you to join me for tips, hacks, and insights to get you launched and fully funded. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Crush Crowdfunding Podcast. In this podcast, you'll find episodes with me talking about crowdfunding strategies and tactics that work. And yes, after helping others raise millions of dollars on crowdfunding, these are things that have been tried and tested. On the podcast, you'll also find episodes where I interview other creators who have successfully funded their ideas on Kickstarter and Indiegogo to learn more about their journey to launch and help you formulate your own plan. In this episode, I had the opportunity to chat with Cleve Oines. He started on his crowdfunding journey the same way others have started, with a strong passion for a product, a burning drive to get it into the hands of people around the world, and an enthusiasm for how crowdfunding can help. We talk about the importance of building a product that solves problems, launching when you're ready, dealing with internet trolls, and putting together a campaign on a shoestring budget. Let's get started. To start off, I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and also about your project.
Sure. So my name is Cleve, and I did a Kickstarter last fall, started it about this time last year for a chef's knife, and I'd never done any crowdfunding before, so it was a learning experience, and thanks to Nolan and her advice and training, it was successful. That's part of it for sure. Her advice was central to its success.
Well, thank you for those kind words there. I'd love to learn more about kind of what you did for the campaign during the pre-launch stage. How did you kind of prepare? I know you created your own video. You were doing a lot of the graphics and a lot of the copywriting. I'd love to kind of walk through the steps of what you did to prepare.
Sure. Well, I felt like I was ready, and I wasn't. I chatted with you via email, and you said, I'm trying to remember the part that stuck out to me the most. You said you need to have your email list built enough that you can get 20% of your goal on day one. And if you can't get that on day one, you need to spend more time building your list. So I did that for about another month, I want to say, and still didn't get it to the level where I wanted it to be, but got it, 4 or 5 times bigger than it had been or would have been had I not gotten that advice. And it was for a chef's knife that is different than any other chef's knife on the market because, for a number of reasons. And you guys can look it up. The page is still on there. If you have any specific details that you want to know about it, Nolan, let me know. Yeah.
So for building this email list, you mentioned that you kind of increase the size of your email list by 4 to 5 times in like a month. How did you go about doing that? A lot of people just don't know the first time coming into crowdfunding.
Sure. Well, the trick to building your list 4 to 5x in 1 month is to start out with a really small list, which is what mine was. But what I did was I built a couple landing pages. I had the Man Kitchen site already on, so I had landing pages there as well as a dedicated domain and another landing page through MailChimp, which was a recommendation from you. And that, along with some Facebook ads, pushing traffic to those pages, got me to 500 or 600 people, which is about a third of what I felt like I wanted after I got your advice. But if I'd pushed it any further than that, it would have been too late in the year to get them on time for my customers. I wanted to start it. I had kind of a firm begin date of that I needed to get it by. So I did launch a little prematurely, but that email list certainly helped. I don't think it would have been successful without that advice and execution.
Well, that's really great to hear. So I know that you're also thinking about launching a new campaign this year too. Can you talk us through kind of what you're doing here for this new campaign and also what kind of preparations you're doing now?
Yeah, well, this one, my hope is that it will be better than the first one, and I've got a little bit of a head start in that I've already got a list. I've got all the backers from the Kickstarter that I can, send emails to. And yeah, my list is significantly larger this time than it was when I launched last time. So there's a bigger built-in audience. There's some custom audiences in Facebook that were successful for the marketing, both pre and post launch last year, that I can reutilize this year. So instead of starting with a foundation, hopefully I can build a second story.
Got it. So from last time, you were creating a lot of your own assets, the pictures, the video. Is that something that you're doing again this time, or are you bringing someone on? Can you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, so my background is in e-commerce, and I've done everything from some basic marketing, a lot of product photography, web design, graphic design. So I had some background in that. I certainly was not as adept as I should have been for the video. The audio was not good. The video was also not great. So I'm seeking some assistance this year from a gentleman that I know who is a professional video guy, and that should be very helpful. Having a little more sheen on the video than I had last time.
I remember watching your video last time and really kind of chuckling along with all the things that you put in the video. It's actually a great video. For anyone listening, definitely go and watch the video from last time too.
Thanks. Yeah, it was fun to make, and hopefully this next one will be as fun to watch as it was to make.
Yeah. So talk us through kind of putting together the campaign. Like, what kind of steps do you kind of wish you had known? What kind of things were maybe obstacles or tripping you up, and now you know better this time, pretty much?
Ooh, let's see. My last one was a little controversial. So I'm a guy who cooks at home, and my method with this brand is, it used to be that you would try and find something that appeals to everybody, and what you end up with is kind of a watered down product. What I wanted to do was create a product that appealed to me and emphasize the reasons that it appealed to me, hoping that the audience would be broad enough that there would be a subset of that other guys who like to cook at home, of which there are many more now than there ever have been in the US at least. And so I really hammered on, I don't know if you'd call it a product market fit, but the niche of guys who cook at home. There were a lot of frustrations that I had with existing chef's knives, the handle size, the blade width, the blade length, rounded spine, other things, many of which would appeal to anyone looking for a chef's knife, but because of the size, I wanted to, because that was the one thing that wouldn't necessarily appeal to anyone. Someone with very small hands wouldn't want a very large chef's knife with a large handle. So, I built it for that niche, and I think that was, that's part of what helped it succeed anyways, because people could see right away if it was a product for them or someone they knew or not.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, to really kind of niche down to build a product for that specific kind of problem or that issue that people face. And it's something that you were facing too, so you were able to really relate to your end user.
Yeah.
When you're kind of growing your list here and you were like doing Facebook ads and kind of finding your audience, how did you go about kind of figuring this persona out, and how did you go about bringing them into your list?
Let's see. Well, the persona, I used myself kind of as the persona. I think that if you are naturally interested in a product and you have discovered an angle for solving a problem and can speak to it from experience in your own voice, that it will naturally attract the people that product will resonate with. So that was a benefit of mine, in that I was marketing to someone that was similar to myself, had similar experience, would have similar issues with other existing products on the market. What was the second part of your question?
How did you find these people now that you have a persona? I know you were doing ads. Was it like specific targeting? Was it specifically going to like Facebook groups or like Instagram hashtags? What was the kind of thing you did to corral these people?
Probably the most helpful thing was I had existing products that were already for sale on Amazon, so I was able to export that audience of people that had already purchased Man Kitchen products And that was a real advantage. So I wasn't just reaching out to a completely cold general audience. The bulk of my efforts started with a more targeted list of, it was several thousand previous purchasers.
Got it. And did you end up doing like lookalike audiences from that on Facebook, or did you just kind of send custom audiences? How did you approach that part of it?
This is a year ago now, and I'll confess that after I finished the Kickstarter campaign, I have not done a single thing with Facebook ads since then. I'm ramping up now to start again for the second campaign, but I'm not in any, that was my very first experience doing Facebook ads. Mm-hmm. So we did do lookalike audiences, and I believe that was it. That's not true. There was another company that I hired called GelUp, who were absolutely fantastic, and they ran Facebook ads for me during the campaign, and it was super beneficial to have their knowledge and expertise in that, because I'm still a novice when it comes to Facebook advertising.
Yeah, a lot of people who kind of read about crowdfunding or learn about crowdfunding really want to work with an ad agency for their advertising. Can you talk us through kind of the process of how you found them, how you got in touch, what the working experience was like?
So I did as much research as I had time for between the main advertisers that specifically target Kickstarters, and GelUp seemed to be everyone's number one choice. And my experience echoes what I was reading. They were absolutely fantastic to work with, super knowledgeable, responsive, and their payment structure to me was much more fair than any of the others that I saw. And in that they only took a percentage of the purchases that they generated, as opposed to taking a giant chunk of, many of the other advertisers will take it right off the top. They'll take their percentage right off the top, whereas GelUp is only compensated when they generate sales.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, where, as you were saying, it's really fair the way that they're pricing their services here. And moving along to this campaign, are you using them again? Are you going with a different agency? How are you kind of approaching that ad buy section of your campaign?
Yeah, I'm hoping that they'll take me again. I'm going to run some on my own just for building the pre-launch list to grow that. And I'm working on that now starting with Facebook, but right at this point, more content creation, pushing people to those landing pages. But I absolutely will reach out to GelUp again. I told them at that point that I was planning to do Kickstarters in the future. They have a process where they don't take everyone. You can't just reach out and they'll take you. They look at your video, they look at your campaign page, because they only want to pick, because of their revenue model, they're motivated to only pick projects that they believe have a reasonable chance of success. And I think even though my campaign, it was 250% of the funding goal, so it was successful, but both them and I were hoping for it to go even beyond that, because their compensation ended up being a pretty small amount of the total. And my hope is that this next one can exceed their and my expectations. And fingers crossed, I hope they take it on as a project, because they were fantastic to work with.
Got it. Yeah, that's really good to know. Thank you for explaining kind of the process there. And when it came to your previous crowdfunding campaign, can you talk to us more about what happened at the end of the campaign? What was communication like with backers? How did shipping and delivery go? It's a whole another can of worms pretty much after Kickstarter ends.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had, because of my background in e-commerce, I had some idea of how fulfillment would work. I did all the fulfillment in-house. I didn't hire a secondary company, with the exception of, oh gosh, I need to remember their name, because they're great to work with. They essentially integrated, Crowd Control is the name of them. And they integrate with my Shopify store, so that I could send all the backers to my Shopify store for the fulfillment. So they could go back in. And there was a little bit of confusion, because a lot of people, first-time backers, particularly on Kickstarter, they feel like they've already completed the purchase when in fact we don't have any of their shipping information. And we need all that, obviously, to send out their orders. So being able to send them to an existing site, my Shopify site, where they could enter in their shipping details and also have the option of doing add-on items was a huge benefit. If I'd been doing all that manually, with hundreds and hundreds of backers, it would have been more than would be reasonable to expect I could do.
Yeah, what's it like communicating with backers post Kickstarter? Is it kind of through your email list? Is it through Kickstarter updates? How are you kind of staying in touch? And also, what kind of, I guess, questions come up from backers a lot?
Well, a lot of them seemed very surprised that the project actually shipped out on time and arrived on time. So I gather a lot of projects don't end that way. That was my expectation from the beginning. I know lots of times things happen, dissipate. So figure out what your deadline is in your product and then add a month or two because there's always going to be delays. Plan those in. They were very pleased to receive their items on the product. Most of the communication has been via doing updates on the Kickstarter site and then replying to people via email. So the main one for me reaching out hasn't been emailed to them. It's been updates on Kickstarter. And then I receive, a handful of emails, but a lot of comments and messages via the Kickstarter platform.
Got it. Okay. And how has it been growing your business after Kickstarter? A lot of people, come to Kickstarter and they're like, okay, this is how I launch my business. But then when they come to after Kickstarter, they're like, what do I do now? How do I, either sell more things to the same people or use these people as social proof, or what do I do next after Kickstarter? Do you have any kind of words of advice, especially since you have a background in marketing too?
Yeah, well, my situation may be a little bit different than many that are seeking to launch their businesses on Kickstarter because I had an existing business. I was not successful by any measure. I was still very early in the process, but some of the foundation was already laid. I had a website. I had some products that were already selling successfully via my own sites and on Amazon. But yeah, I would certainly recommend that people put those blocks in place before and think about the types of products that you want to be in so that there are opportunities for complementary products in the future.
Got it. And do you now have, what is kind of the driving force for your business now? Is it adding new backers, adding new customers, or is it kind of trying to sell additional products to the same customers? A lot of people kind of wonder about that too.
Yeah, well, keep solving problems is my goal. I do a lot of cooking. I love cooking. I love solving problems. And because I'm a guy who cooks at home that has limited knowledge and big hands and other things that are unique to guys cooking at home, I just go with what I experience. So, for example, this new product, I was making steaks 2 years ago, and it took me 73 cranks on my pepper mill to get pepper on those steaks. And frankly, I gave up before I had as much pepper as I wanted because it takes so long with most pepper mills to grind pepper. So I thought, well, there's got to be a better way to do this. And 2 years later, and many prototypes and multiple revisions and thousands of emails, I've got a product that is about 5 to 10 times faster than the top selling pepper mills on Amazon. So there's an example of how are you finding new products? I'm cooking. And when I run into a problem that I think has an interesting solution, that's what sets me off. So I go on a pepper rabbit trail and I learn everything I can about pepper and pepper mills and everything. And in the kitchen space where I'm at, there's a near infinite number of new problems to solve and new products to solve them.
I like how you talked about kind of that passion and kind of obsession with cooking, and how that you find problems and you just go on to solve them. I really love that, because that 73 crank thing really resonates. I was making steak the other day too and had the same problem.
Oh, it's crazy. I was watching, there's a number of chefs that I follow, and Michael Simon is one of them. And during the quarantine, he was doing these, I think he did it for 30 days, where it was dinners, I forget what he called it, dinners with Michael Simon. And he would do a recipe where the whole thing is filmed, there's no cuts, and he just walks through his process, which is a fantastic way of communicating, because there's not a lot of editing, there's not a lot of fixing, and a lot of knowledge that you may not write in a recipe comes out. And one of the things that he made was halushki, and I counted, because at that point I had already started working on the pepper mill and was well into it. He cranked 67 times in a recipe, a dish for 4 people. And he didn't stop because he had enough pepper. He stopped because his pepper mill broke. So I'm going to try and reach out to him and send him one of these pepper mills, and maybe I can get his honest feedback on whether he prefers cranking 67 times or 7 times.
That's hilarious. That's a really great kind of use case for this. Like, hey, someone's actually a real famous chef and they're having the same issue, and it's public, online, live, and they're facing this issue.
Yeah, I watched master classes, and Thomas Keller is fantastic, and Gordon Ramsay is fantastic. And I've seen these guys cranking 50 plus times on these 2-person dishes. And that to me tells me that there is a place for this product.
Yeah. So tell us more about, I guess, that journey to creation. How did you go about maybe finding someone to actually manufacture this, provide you prototypes? How did you go about this entire process?
Yeah, so with the knife, originally what I wanted to do was manufacture in the US, and that's a worthwhile goal and very difficult to execute on. I spoke with a number of US-based manufacturers, and what I found was if they could create a similar product, and many of them could not, it was 3 to 5 times the cost, which I understand buying American, and I would prefer to do that in cases where the cost is similar, but the reality is it's very difficult to produce certain products in the US at a competitive price. So for the pepper mill specifically, I looked online. I ordered the best pepper mills that were available, the ones where people in the reviews mentioned that they were fast, put out a lot of pepper. I found the manufacturers of their burr sets, and then I found that the manufacturers of their burr sets would not sell to me because they had exclusive agreements with existing manufacturers. So I used what information I had, which was dimensions and types, and reached out to overseas manufacturers to see if they could make a similar burr set or even larger or improved to use in the pepper mill. And then a lot of back and forth, a lot of emails. You can find some manufacturers on places like Alibaba, but real good ones are difficult to find. You find a lot of trading agents. That's a whole nother topic. But yeah. Sorry, I trailed off a little bit there. The manufacturer that I worked with actually for the first year of development ended up that we couldn't solve a certain problem. And so I had to start the process over again of looking for new manufacturers armed with the new information that I had and the hiccups that we experienced at the previous manufacturer. So there's not a step A, B, C to find it. Oftentimes it's A, C, Z, Z, and some Chinese characters.
Yeah, I really like that you kind of walk through this process, and you can kind of hear the frustration even in your voice, because it really speaks to your capabilities as an entrepreneur, really, to like see a problem and just figure it out and just kind of take what you know and just keep moving forward. And I think a lot of people really needed to hear that, because a lot of people are like, hey, how do I do this? Oh, I don't know how. I'm just going to stop. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I am not opposed to shortcuts, and if I can find them, I will absolutely use them. but there's really no substitute for pressing on.
Absolutely. So, with this new campaign, when is it launching? When are you planning for it to go live? What kind of stage of preparation are you at right now?
So right now I'm building content, taking images, working on videos. I'm expecting the next prototype, which I hope will be production ready. That one should arrive here in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And once I can confirm that it's production ready, then I can do all the final photography and launch the Kickstarter. So my hope is to launch it in about 30 days, which means that I'll probably launch it in about 60 days.
And are you going into this with your existing audience? Are you finding a new audience to kind of pad that too? Or how are you approaching your audience this time? How are you notifying your existing audiences too?
Yeah, so I don't know if this is a violation of the terms of service for Kickstarter or not. I probably shouldn't say that publicly. But I reach out to them with updates on the other project. So it was a chef's knife. And my plan was to have an add-on product of a magnetic knife bar so that they'd have a way to mount it. And that ended up being a whole new set of headaches because the knife was much larger and heavier than other knives, and none of the existing magnetic knife bars were strong enough to hold it. So what I thought would be a month-long process was a 6-month-long process. I finally got the first batch of those to the customers who ordered them, and the product that I will use to send my next update. So I want to update the rest of the Kickstarter backers and let them know when the rest of them finally arrive. They're stuck in customs right now, but and as an addendum to that notification that, hey, you can order these knife bars now, they're in stock, I will say, and here's another product that I'm getting ready to launch on Kickstarter. Let me know if you're interested. And of course, those that are already on the list will be notified via email if they're not caught on the Kickstarter update.
Gotcha. Yeah, it definitely updating about a new product on Kickstarter is not against terms of service. So you're
goodness.
Yeah. So if people want to kind of join your new launch or like kind of sign up, where should they go to? Where should they find out more about this new product, about your old product, existing products, things like that?
MANNKITCHEN.com, MANN. They can sign up there. Also on bestpeppermill.com. Those would be the two places where they could be notified for the pepper mill. And then if they're interested in the knife or any of the other Man Kitchen products, mannkitchen.com. And I got a lot of blowback because, whenever you gender something, call it Man Kitchen, it's can be mildly or massively controversial. Man Kitchen, so everybody knows, man is Old Norse for my or mine. It's the possessive form. So Man Kitchen doesn't mean it's just for men. It means my kitchen.
Oh, actually, I did not know that. That's really, really cool. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, unnecessary, but maybe that'll head off some hate.
Okay, that's actually a really cool point that you bring up. A lot of hate that can come online. Like, how do you deal with haters?
Oh gosh, yeah, I got a lot, particularly on Facebook when we were running ads. The comments were fantastically offensive, and you laugh and then you stop reading them. So that's what I did. I was like, these ads they're working. Maybe a little bit of outrage increases the engagement. It certainly wasn't my intent, but whatever works. And then I just stopped reading the comments. That isn't always the best technique. I'm sure there's probably a better way to handle it, but I was so busy with other things that I found that reading people making comments about hating the product or the idea or this, that, and the other wasn't good for my mental health. So I stopped.
Yeah. Oh, that's actually a really good solution. I sometimes when I get online hate or trolls coming about, I also just go about doing other things in my day too. Because again, it's still engagement, right?
Yeah. So who was it that said bad attention is better than no attention? That's in some cases true. Certainly with Facebook ads, there are a lot of things that are best to just ignore.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and just sharing all these insights about your previous campaign and also giving us a little tease about your upcoming one. Everybody should definitely go check out Man Kitchen. And thank you again, Cleve, for being on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for the advice that helped me be successful on Kickstarter. I am super, super grateful.
And that wraps up our episode today. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please be sure to leave a review to help others find this podcast. And most importantly, if you're feeling that fire and you're ready to get started on your crowdfunding campaign, be sure to head to the show notes of the podcast. I've linked some of my resources that others have used to successfully launch and get funded. Thanks for listening to the Crush Crowdfunding podcast at crushcrowdfunding.com. Tune in the same time next week for more ways to crush your launch.